Hello and welcome to Cinema Subculture, where we discuss everything strange, obscure, and downright messed up in the world of movies. My name's Gary.
And I'm Simon. So, Gary, what film brings us here this evening? What are we chatting about?
River's Edge, a dark coming-of-age movie starring Keanu Reeves, Crispin Glover, and Dennis Hopper. When a teenager is killed at the hands of a friend, a group of high school kids struggle with feelings of ambivalence, apathy, and loyalty in late 80s America.
So, I picked this film, Gary. This is a film that I'd only seen previously once, and I kind of just picked up based on the kind of synopsis, in the back of the box synopsis. I thought the premise was really interesting. So I'm really keen to see what you thought about this.
Right, well, this is a first time watch for me, yeah, and I was like, now that I've seen it, I'm like, how have I missed this all these years? But when you mentioned that we should do this film, see, I'd always in my head conflated this with The River Wild, that Meryl Streep movie. So I knew this is Dennis Hopper in it, but those two movies were kind of meshed together somehow for me. But
Dennis Hopper in that as well, is he?
No, I don't think he is.
No, right.
But I don't know why. I just River, yeah.
Yeah.
But this was a bit of a revelation. I thought it's fantastic. A really great coming of age movie. But a coming of age movie, a teen movie that sort of inverts the traditional upbeat, fun teenage life that we normally see depicted in those kind of movies. This is wow. This is like bleak, really gritty, realistic stuff we've got here. But what I also thought was great, like thematically, I think the film is, if not ahead of its time, very precisely. It's like it seems to, tap into the whole notions of like Gen X, sort of the apathetic teen culture that would later become popularised when grunge blew up in 1991. With Kurt Cobain, like that whole sort of mentality, it seemed to have that down already, and this is 86, I think this was done, but loved that, and I really loved how it was able to paint this picture, sort of study the generation relationships. It seemed to do that really well, and how it wasn't just about the teenagers, the main protagonists, it's sort of about how they interrelated with the older generation and the younger generation. Had really great insight into how that particular time period was sort of shaping the youth of the day. I thought the script was great. Performances were amazing. I'm a big Dennis Hopper fan. This was another classic Dennis Hopper performance, I think. Crispin Glover, loved it. People might have issue with the Glover performance, sometimes a bit too much. Personally, I thought it worked. I think Glover's over the topness works when the other characters are playing it down a bit. It seems to give it this strange vibe because a lot of the performances are extremely naturalistic, are very kind of muted, held back, like particularly the Daniel Roebuck playing the Samson John Tollett character, who's very underplaying it for the most part of the film. So that gives Glover a bit of space to go wild, and it's got a naturalism to the film. It's very realistic, but then it's got this sort of more wild element when you've got both Glover and Hopper in there as well. Yeah. So it gives it something special, I think. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on it. It wasn't quite what I thought I was getting. I don't really know what the tone I thought I was getting with the premise. But I found, I found that the kind of the bleakness of the film really interesting. It immediately put me in, having seen Gummo before this, like it gave me that kind of vibe, like especially the opening on the bridge and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of the I think that's the opening of Gummo as well, the little kid on the bridge.
Right.
But there was something about that kind of same kind of grimy, kind of grungy, as you say, before its time aesthetic that really kind of vibed with me. And it does feel like quite a modern film almost, like for 86 or something this was, which is really weird. Like it's kind of and it leads into what you said, ahead of its time. I love the performances in this as well. Again, I'm a big fan of Crispin Glover. I've seen him around about this era, like in the Friday the 13th Part 4, and then we've obviously got like Back to the Future and stuff. And I think, yeah, he's a kind of I don't know if the film would have been like, I don't know if it would have hurt the film if his character wasn't so over the top. Would it have been too bleak? That way, kind of, because even though what he's doing is probably some of the darkest shit in the film, really, because of the way he plays it, it comes across. You're kind of not sure of his intentions or where he's coming from with it, But yeah, I found it really chilling, like the kind of the kind of the way the characters don't seem to care about the kind of the murder. Not that they don't care, but they seem kind of just ambivalent about it. Like kind of it's happened, and it's that that kind of feels like almost of the kind of we talked about it with Elephant, but like the Columbine generation of like just apathy towards everything, and the grunge kind of thing, like where it's like they don't really seem to care about much beyond themselves, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, and I loved seeing Dennis Hopper in this. I mean, he kind of turned up. I was kind of, I knew he was in it, but again, not knowing the kind of character he would play, but knowing what type of actor he is. Like when he first turns up, it's like it's almost like from a different film. His stuff until he kind of integrates more into the group, in the kind of like the third act. But yeah, what an interesting character Feck is. That's like he's brilliant to watch on screen. The rest of the teen characters, outside Crispin Glover, they hold their own, but as you say, they come across quite naturalistic and almost again not really film-esque. Whereas I'd say Glover and to a much larger extent Dennis Hopper, like they feel like this is a movie. You know what I mean? It kind of changes it a little bit. But yeah, I thought this was really fun to watch, and it's just got a real like weird kind of feel for the era that was made in. It's just different from most other kind of 80s flicks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I think the main crux of the movie is not the murder itself, but the reaction to the murder. And my take on it is like they sort of split into two camps. You've got the characters who are really blasé about it, or don't really care, or don't seem to have any reaction to it.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah, so you've got Matt, played by Keanu Reeves, Clarissa, played by Ione Skye, and even John, the actual killer, seems to really have no reaction to it, and that's how the story progresses, because he starts showing the body to the others as if to say, tell me how to feel about this. Just fascinating. But then the other group would be like led by Lane, and I would also lump Feck and Tim, the younger brother, in that category as well, but to a lesser extent. But Lane seems to be like, my takeaway from it was he's like a character from a previous generation, like that would be sort of from maybe say like a Western or something, a traditional like movie of movies past, where this thing happens, and then you have action orientated characters where they seem to be like avenging, or they have an immediate sense of the action that should proceed. So they're more driven by things like nobility, loyalty, a sort of romance of a really kind of strong moral code. But I think that's really well done in that contrast, because there's even a quote from Lane where he says about his current generation, his own generation, like there's no sense of pride, no sense of loyalty, no sense of nothing. So that's been able to depict this sort of Gen X blasé kind of nothingness, nihilism, with a kind of a more sort of what you might call idealistic philosophy of the past. But it's weird because in some ways, like the Lane's reaction is kind of immoral because he's trying to cover up the crime. But I think my takeaway from it is his immediate reaction is stand up for your friend, protect your
Yeah.
friend,
Mm-hmm.
protect the group. So I thought that was brilliant. But yeah, on you go.
I was going to say, it's interesting. Yeah, I agree that it feels like that. I guess his motivation for me, just given some of the comments made by like Keanu Reeves' character, who it kind of implies that this is not necessarily him all the time. You know, this is not usually his usual behavior. All right, or I'm sure his friends aren't murdering people usually, right? But it feels like, you know, I guess Keanu Reeves' character seems quite surprised at how protective he's being of John, Samson, the character. But so he probably has the most extreme reaction to the murder. Apart from probably the Keanu Reeves character who eventually reports it to the police, right? Because none of the rest of them seem to really do very much. I suppose the little brother Tim, he's got a fairly extreme reaction to it for, like, you know, the age of the character and stuff. But yeah, I guess I just wasn't sure, like, you know, if this was out of character for that guy, you know, for Lane. Was this like a kind of just him reacting wildly to it, you know, or you know, or is that just the type of person, the type of character he was?
Right.
This kind of, you know, out of time kind of.
Yeah, there's one line where I think Clarissa says, like, he always tells him what to do, as if he's sort of like the most active sort of group leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first reaction was that it was sort of Lane who was sort of taking the immoral path, whereas the others were sort of in this kind of middle ground. But in perspective, when you see it all, I think he's sort of grounded in a sort of clear sense of morality, even if it's a subjective kind of morality, of doing the right thing. But yeah,
it's interesting that he even, like, you know, he's trying to, like, hide the body and stuff like that. It's like he just kind of gets left on his own, and like even like John, like, kind of like he tries to stop another character leaving, Mike leaving, and John stops him for. So it's almost like, as you say, like John doesn't even know how to feel about it. But I thought that seems funny when he kind of gets left on his own a little bit, like, and then they all kind of leave. But yeah, I know what you mean. I guess I never really thought about him having that moral, like, being on the kind of potato. I guess on his with his perspective, he's on the right side of the moral line. But yeah, I guess I kind of, my first takeaway from the film, the first time I watched it, was more he was like trying to own this. Like, he hadn't done anything in his mind as cool as what John had done, so he was almost trying to, like, he wanted in on the act a little bit. To be a part of it, because he is kind of the leader character, I guess, maybe. But then maybe that comes from a sense of loyalty that he feels because he is kind of the leader of the pack a little bit.
Yeah, there's a line later in the film where it's in the classroom with the teacher who's sort of attacking them a wee bit, saying, like, you know, why are you not feeling anything? Like, where's the passion? Where's the reaction? And he says, like, I can't remember the exact line, but we should be out in the streets chasing down John. It's like, that's Lane. But in a sort of inverted way, he's the only guy who's like doing anything, who's actually out there, you know, making a move. But yeah, I really liked how they had sort of these character pairings, character contrasts going on with the different generations. I thought, like, building on that idea that the sort of generational divide, I thought was evident between some of the great scenes that we had between John and Feck, Dennis Hopper and Daniel Roebuck, because Daniel Roebuck character sort of gets hidden away with Feck to sort of try and keep him out of the way. But the Feck character also has supposedly killed his girlfriend in the past, and Feck says at one point that he killed her because he was in love. He shot her in the back of the head, and John said, no, he goes, yeah, I loved her. And then John goes, I strangled mine. And Feck goes, "Did you love her?" Like, he goes, "She was okay." But that's lack of that kind of like failure to have like a strong opinion on the thing. I think that's brilliantly done, just to represent that generational mindset.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it really does show the separation of the generations, and it kind of shows because Lane and Feck seem to have quite a good rapport, but they feel like they're of that, as you say, like when you look at it that way, they do feel that they're of a similar generation, where Feck's almost happy enough to go along and help John in a similar way that Lane is, but Feck has that line in the sand where, like, because John didn't, he didn't have any emotion about it. That's like a line too far. It's like that there's no honor there, or there's no moral, like, code or whatever. And that kind of leads to, like, the kind of the conclusion of the film. That is interesting. That is quite.
In that scene, there's a line from John where he says his life philosophy in life is you do shit and it's done and then you die. There's some brilliant shots of like Feck's Hopper's face when he's delivering that line, just total disgust with this kind of nihilism that's completely foreign to an older guy like Feck. So I thought that was brilliant. Brilliantly painted. I think I would lump Tim into that Feck Lane character arc, because Tim seems to have quite a strong reaction to the murder, and he sort of wants to be older, ahead of his time, but he feels like a sense of disloyalty with his brother when the brother reports it to the police and is sort of doing the wrong thing in Tim's eyes. So I mean, the first time I watched the film, I thought we had too much of the little kids storyline. I didn't care for that too much. Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily feel that the second time. I felt like I was able to kind of, I guess, because I knew where we were going with the characters. Like, I felt like, I felt it was just all right. Like, it definitely it verges on it, but I thought it worked okay, and I kind of liked that I guess in essence the reason Tim wants to be involved in the whole thing is really to hang out with his brother. I mean, that's kind of like what it comes down to for him, because there's an alienation there at home, and he's like, I mean, he's acting out and stuff like that. He's like, he destroys his little sister's toy and things, and he's kind of been made out to be like this kind of bad seed. So he is acting out for it, but and then that's where the sense of betrayal becomes, because he feels that he's part of the gang, because he essentially saw John. I mean, I wonder though, do you think he's latched onto John rather than he's trying to be part of the gang to be with his brother? Because he sees, it's John that he sees, and then sees the dead body, and then he can approaches John and gives him the beer and things like that. I don't know if he's already kind of too far gone from his brother at that point, that he's kind of latched onto John. Because is that like when he's like John wants us here when Lane tries to get him, or was it Lane that tries to get him to leave? Right. And it just cuts. Right. And it's just like this really awkward, like, kind of like, again, just indifference to everything that the John character has. But yeah, no. So did you feel the same way the second time you watched it?
Well, yeah. The thing is, like, the first time, I kind of just wanted more of the main protagonist's storyline. I thought the segment with the 12-year-old boys, I thought it was maybe pushing it a bit far into incredulity, like they're driving a car, they're like knocking out Feck. But once you've seen the whole movie, that's kind of necessary, because that's crucial to kind of bring it all full circle when you have that reunion between Tim and his brother, sort of reuniting the generations together a wee bit. So I think overall, you kind of see why it's there. But
so you spoke about Glover's performance. I didn't really look much into the kind of like reactionary stuff to this film, but is he kind of a contentious point of it? Like, do people not like?
From what I've heard, anecdotally, I watched this interview with Richard Linklater.
Okay.
He's a big fan of the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think Glover's always quite a kind of Marmite actor, isn't he?
Mm.
It's especially in this film where it is played so realistically, the drama, and then you this guy just sort of kind of thrown in from something else. But yeah, uh, it works for me. Works for me.
Yeah. No.
I love
Uh,
there's so many great lines, man.
yeah.
From Glover. Yeah, in the film.
It's the delivery of the lines as well, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah, he's just got something about him that is just really interesting to watch.
yeah.
And he's for me, similar to what you're saying. For me, even though he stands out amongst like the rest of the cast because of the type of performance, it still seems to settle in to the film. You know what I mean? It doesn't make him feel like shouldn't be in the film.
Yeah,
It just there's just something about him. But I can understand why he'd be an acquired taste. He
yeah.
might kind of take you out of it a little bit.
I think because he's an action-orientated character as well, it works. I think he initially was going to be a different character
Right.
when he first was
Cast.
cast. No, what's the word? Like when you
Audition.
yeah, first audition for a different part.
Right.
I can't remember what one, but yeah. But yeah, he's got space to work here. I think if he'd been more passive, um, the film maybe wouldn't have lacked. It would have lacked a bit of energy, maybe if everyone's
Yeah.
like sort of dialing it down.
And I think, as I say, like if he'd played it a little more like what you'd imagine that character to be like, if you were just to describe it, it could have like. I mean, and I don't. Again, I don't. I said at the beginning, but I don't know if it would hurt the film necessarily, but it could come off as a lot darker. The film, and I think him being there as that bridge between the Feck and given the way that Feck is played, it kind of brings a kind of as you say, an energy, but not a kind of not a comedy to it, but there's a lighter nature to it that kind of the same way, like similar to the way that Hopper does, where he's playing like quite a in theory, comedic-ish character with the kind of stories and the stuff that they're talking about, but there's this undertone of darkness to him. But it's just a nice balance. It just kind of makes it quite palatable, I think.
Yeah.
And I think because I remember the first time they go and fighting the body, I found that scene quite chilling. Like when they didn't believe that it was a real body and stuff, like, you know, and they're like kind of kicking it and stuff like that, and as they all kind of suddenly, you know, or slowly realise, there was something about the way that was kind of presented. And even the first time we see the body at the beginning of the film, when John's just lying, you know, sitting next to the body, it's quite cold.
Yeah.
So I think they need Crispin Glover and Dennis Hopper, those characters, those actors, to kind of lift it a little bit from just kind of what could be quite, you know, depressing. Like it's not. It comes off. It stops the film from being like a bummer of a film to watch. It's actually quite interesting and manages to kind of sit up a little bit from just a dredge or a depressing dark film.
What did you make of the cinematography? I thought it was really well done. Frederick Elms, who also shot Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, done this. So it's very sort of bleak and sort of matching that sort of themes in the story, like a lot of sort of blues and sort of very kind of sort of pale colour palette he's working with there.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it all like it all kind of stays in with the tone of the script. You know, it really is quite fitting, and I can definitely see, like, you know, when you say that the guy that shot Blue Velvet, you can kind of see it. It's like another other side of the coin for Blue Velvet, which is quite a colourful film most of the time. Whereas this is like kind of more washed out, and you know, again, you definitely it starts off at the river's edge, right? Like, and that kind of brown murky water, like you can feel the cold almost, you know, and then we see the dead body, and it's like, you know, it's all kind of blue, and you definitely kind of that comes across right off the screen, I think. But yeah, no, I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, kind of understated in a sense that in terms of there's no flashy camera moves or anything that stands out. It's quite kind of, to my eye, kind of nuts and bolts, but that's sort of perfect for this sort of realistic story, isn't it? You don't want anything to kind of detract from that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's none of the kind of more arty or like stylistic shots from Blue Velvet or that, you know, like it definitely, as you say, it's the kind of workman's you know, guide to camera work for like for that, and it really fits this film.
Only area that I had a minor quibble with was the score, which I didn't. The score was fine in itself, but I thought there was sometimes the score sort of lifted the film into a more kind of melodramatic mindset. Sort of, it sort of you know, took away from the realism, the grittiness of the film, because the score sometimes quite felt like kind of 50s style.
Yeah,
it took it out. Diluted the realism a wee bit sometimes in some of the scenes. Maybe it was a bit kind of, it was too much. It was sort of, you know, over egging it a wee bit in certain scenes, I thought, even though I did like it in general.
I get what you mean. I definitely, you notice the score, but I think it's because it is so contrasted to what we're seeing. Yeah, so maybe it doesn't quite fit in a lot of places, but overall, I did again enjoy the score. I thought I liked that kind of playful, kind of, it was almost like you're watching like a 40s or 50s cop story kind of, right, you know, or crime thing, even though it didn't match what we were necessarily seeing. But I kind of like that kind of contrast. But again, it's one of those things like the Glover thing. It's like, would it hurt the film or make it better if it was a different score? I don't know. I feel like it's kind of, for me, it works the way it is. But there were definitely times where the score comes in where it might feel, as you say, a little bit overpowering for what we're seeing. I'd agree with that.
So that'll do it for our discussion on River's Edge. You've been watching Cinema Subculture. If you've enjoyed this content, please make sure you have subscribed on YouTube, like the video, and hit the notification bell.
Thanks for watching. I've been Simon.
I've been Gary.
Keep it extreme.